Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, going to go on an email that was sent from a subscriber. That's from a guy, sounds like he's probably in his mid to late 60s, I'd say. And he shares his story about events that started about 30 some years ago when he met what is now his ex-wife. You're going to see in his story, guys, that early on in life, his 20s, early 30s, he had a lot of success in business, made a lot of freaking money, sold a company and all that. Obviously, it was worth millions. And did everything right on the business front. However, as these things usually go, his business sense didn't get carried over to the romance department, and he picked the wrong girl. And this guy did a lot of things I tell you guys not to do, but he didn't know any better. And he had the marriage from hell. And you're going to see all about that and everything, all the things that he missed along the way. However, you're going to see eventually, fortunately, the harpy ends up disappearing from his life, etc., etc. And now he's doing well, has done well ever since she's been gone. And her life, well, not so well. And let me going to go over here, guys, once again to point out along the way the things not to do. The red flags, paying attention to her family's like, laying down the law with her, what happens when a guy acts weak. I mean, the list goes on and on. And this guy knows this. He's writing in literally to share that so that guys don't do the same things that he did. In fact, he does my job of smacking him in the story. He literally writes smack after every boneheaded thing he did back in the day. And he has now 3 sons. He had 3 sons with her. If there was a silver lining to the relationship, it was the 3 sons that he had with her. And he obviously is paying attention to things going on nowadays in my channel to make sure his sons don't make the mistakes that he did, etc., etc. So it's definitely an entertaining one. And I like all emails from guys, but I like getting them from the older guys, 60s on up, to share about things that went on decades ago to show you, guess what? Women are women, men are men. We do the same crap 30 years ago as we do today, except it's way worse today. So it starts off, he says, hi SSM. You asked for personal stories, so here's one that might serve as a good teaching moment as it spans decades. This story is so full of smacks, your arm will get tired from swinging it so often. I've noticed some smacks and red flags, but please add as many as you wish. Yeah, my arm is sore from smacking people the other day, so I'm just gonna, I'll let him do the smacking of himself. And when he misses something, I'll smack him then. I became interested in your channel in part to learn more about what my 3 adult sons are dealing with. All 3 are smart, good-looking, in great shape, and over 6 feet tall. 2 are college graduates, all 3 are in their 30s. None have been married, and currently none are in serious dating relationships, nor trying to be in one. Well, sir, you've done a good job raising your boys. And I know what your ex-wife is like, so given that, you've done a fantastic job. By the way, this story, besides being a teaching moment, is pretty bizarre. Some of your SSM audience may doubt its authenticity. As you say, sometimes the truth can be stranger than fiction. There's definitely one part to this that I guarantee a lot of you guys will be like, that's bullshit. But that one thing aside, this sounds like very, very plausible situation. As you say, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. With the exception of the names of the individuals and the specific country I mentioned, everything I have written is factual and without embellishment. It is the first time I've ever written about it. No one, not even my kids or my siblings, know all the details. As you'll see, although this story begins more than 3 decades ago, in many ways it was a precursor to the modern world we're dealing with now. Yeah, again, men are men, women are women. They did the same bullshit 30 years ago. They did the same bullshit 300 years ago, 3,000 years ago. But yes, in many ways it's worse thanks to things like the internet and dating apps and feminism and all other shit. I was introduced by a good friend to a young woman who was an employee of his. He had been able to observe her in the office over an extended period of time and thought highly of her, hence the introduction. We will call her Elaine, who was 24 years old at the time. Elaine and I arranged to go out for Sunday brunch. He says, smack number 1. Yeah, don't do fucking breakfast dates. If you're going to do a date, do it at night. Have 1 drink. That's it. Size her up. Don't spend a lot of money on her. I picked her up at her place, which is not a smack, because it gave me the opportunity to see where she lived and meet her mother. Red flag number 1. Mom's house was a chaotic mess. Red flag number 2. Mom was divorced, and I later learned she was on marriage number 3. So there's smack number 2. Dude, if you go to a girl's house and it's a freaking mess, to me, that's a freaking major red flag, because, I mean, I don't want some girl that's a fucking slob. And her mom, who she lives with, is on marriage number divorce 3 times, so probably on to marriage number 4. her mother is the role model, whether she wants to admit it or not, and that probably means that could be your life with her if you get serious with her. Seriously. When Elaine came downstairs, she was on crutches. I asked if she wanted to cancel a date, but she said she was okay, and we left. She later told me that before I asked her out, when I'd asked her if she was in a relationship, she said, "I was, but you'll be my first date since it ended." She said that it's true, but she definitely had not officially ended that relationship. She did the next day, but it produced a fight with her boyfriend, who bit her arm so hard it particularly severed her bicep. Okay. She then stepped on some broken glass from the fight, which cut the bottom of her foot, which is why she needs some crutches. Smack number 3, I proceeded with a date. Yeah, smack. So you're going out on a date with this broad, who technically still is a relationship with another dude, and got into, obviously, a physical altercation with him, which shows she's obviously attracted to a type of guy that's going to do that type of thing. Dude, run. You had all these signs to run. But what I told you guys, success in business doesn't necessarily mean success with women. Look at Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, or all these guys have been divorced multiple times and keep doing the same dumbass things. They're great in business, but when it comes to women, that chick that Jeff Bezos right now, Lauren Sanchez, I think that's her name, I guarantee you she's going to be the next multi-billionaire woman in probably 5 to 10 years. We had a great time. Elaine is highly intelligent, beautiful, and charming. In those days, I couldn't recognize the attributes of a sociopath, but I eventually learned. Smack number 4, despite all these warning signs, we continued to see each other. You can't tell me you couldn't get another chick, but probably because she was 24, and she was beautiful and charming, you ignored all the red flags, thinking, she'll be different with me. It says, thanks to SSM, I could look back and realize that she was settling. I was in my mid-30s at that point and had already built and sold one of my companies for what today would be in the low 8 figures. I'm okay looking, well over 6 feet tall, and in good shape. I'm the oldest of 7 kids from the Midwest, a former Boy Scout and altar boy, and was blessed to have great, loving relationships with my parents. Because of this background, I wore rose-colored glasses and can be gullible and naive, as you'll see. Bro, I'm glad you can admit that. Because if you can't admit that, you're not ever going to heal or learn from your mistakes. So, how awesome is that? He's a born businessman, great success by mid-30s, sold one of his companies, multimillionaire. Guy like that has to be so careful who he allows into his life, because people are going to be lining up to take advantage of you. So why was she settling? Her boyfriend was part of the extended Kuwaiti royal family, and his dad was incredibly wealthy. This is the part that you're all going to be like, oh, bullshit, whatever. You never know. I'm going to give benefit of the doubt here. You never fucking know. Much later, I learned the problem with the relationship was that he would have to marry someone selected by the father. Multiple wives were okay as long as the father approved, which meant they must all be Kuwaitis. Western women were okay for mistresses only. So the woman who became your wife, mother of your children, was the mistress. After their breakup fight, his family whisked him back to Kuwait. He was on summer break from college, and they wanted to make sure there wouldn't be any publicity or worse, criminal prosecution. It's a smack number 4. Elaine and I dated that summer. Smack. You're smacking yourself, but I'm going to do it too. Why? Again, you're a multi-fucking-millionaire in your early mid-30s. You can't get other chicks? But clearly she knew what buttons to push with you. By September, she had moved most of her stuff into my place from her mother's and an ex-boyfriend's place. Smack. Dude, you barely know her. She's already moving her shit in. But I'm sure she was taking care of you in ways I can't mention on this channel to get you to let her move into your very nice house and enjoy your wealth. One day I came home from work and Elaine and all of her stuff was gone. This was a few years before cell phones and the internet. So all I could do was call her mom and sister, who both played dumb, telling me they knew nothing. My townhouse had a gated entrance, so I checked with the guards, who told me she had come in a few hours earlier with some guy that left a short time later. Gee, I wonder who it is. Probably Mr. Kuwait. I didn't know for sure, but my suspicion was that the ex-boyfriend, we'll call him Abdul, had returned to the U.S. and she had dumped me. Nearly 2 months passed, and I had largely accepted that our relationship with Elaine was not meant to be. Yeah, that's a good thing, dude. Then I received a call from her, and she says, wait for it, I'm pregnant. And I'd say, tough shit. Get a DNA test, and you can call me later. I tried to ask questions, but she hung up. Well, that's real thoughtful of her. I tried to redial, but the call had been made from a payphone. Another 2 months had passed without contact. I didn't know if I was going to be a father or not. Then Elaine called me to tell me that I was the dad and asked me if I wanted to go to Lamaze classes with her. Oh, hello, it's nice to hear from you again. Okay, let's see the proof. And in fact, I want proof from multiple sources because I don't trust a goddamn thing you say. Lamaze class my ass. She said that Abdul had set her up in her own apartment and that he was not her boyfriend. Naive as I was, even I didn't believe that one. We did attend about half a dozen classes, but nothing else. Smack! Why the hell are you doing that? Please tell me you got actually real proof that this was your kid. And if it was your kid, why the hell do you have to go with her? Let her mom has been divorced 3 times in that shithole she lives in. Deal with that stuff. I realize if it was your kid, it's your kid, but still. She now had her own landline, but we rarely talked on the phone. As the due date neared, I left her a series of voicemails asking her if she wanted me to be there for labor and at the birth, since that was the purpose of the Lamaze classes. She didn't call me back. I finally left a message letting her know that if I didn't hear from her within a day, I was going to leave town on a business trip, and I left the number of the hotel I'd be staying at. She didn't call, so I left on the trip. Something tells me the reason she wasn't calling you is that she actually probably never got that DNA test. And was waiting to see when the child was born to see if the child looked more like it was from the Arab world or from not the Arab world. And if the child was from the Arab world, you're never going to hear from her again. But if the child didn't look like she was Abdul's child, then you need to hear from her. That's probably why I didn't hear from her. While I was on the road, I got a call from Abdul, letting me know that I had a son and he and Elaine were doing well. It was the only time I ever talked with this guy. Oh, that was real nice to talk to you, Mr. Abdul. So obviously the child was born, doesn't look like Abdul, so now they're calling you. A couple months passed by. Elaine and I were talking regularly on the phone about her and the baby. That led to me visiting her at the apartment, which Abdul was still paying for. As you may have guessed, that was several years before DNA testing was available. Ah, okay, now we're getting somewhere. So she was waiting for the kid to be born to make sure it didn't look like Abdul. Clearly the baby didn't have any Arab features, but that didn't mean I was the father. True, but still. After a few months, I had a decision to make. Do I accept that being the dad without knowing if biologically that was the case, or do I run for the hills? I chose to be the dad. Clearly a smack here, but I was primarily thinking of the child. Smack! Yeah, damn right. Yeah, the child doesn't look like Abdul, but still, you never know. So obviously he said this is before a DNA test, so I stand corrected. But anyhow, you don't have to be with her. So you can raise that child together if that's what you wanted to do. The second question was, what about the mom? Here's a double smack. But I decided to let them live with me and see how things evolve. Smack! You let her mom from the rat's nest come live with you after how this girl treated you, cheating on you and all the other bullshit and ignoring you and, oh, I'm pregnant, hung up the phone, you'll hear from her for months? Dude, again, great in business, terrible with women. After another 6 months, when the baby was 1 year old, we got married. Smack, smack, smack. Why the hell would you marry this broad? I know that was the way things were back in the days, and you said that you were a Boy Scout when you were a kid, an altar boy, and you're from the Midwest, and you probably have good values and meant well, but holy fucking shit. But you're going to see, guys, by the way, you see how she's treated him? And how he still keeps coming back for more, and he marries her and all that. What does that tell her? I can treat this guy like dog shit, and he'll still keep coming back for more. And do women respect guys so they can treat like dog shit and keep coming back for more? No. And they treat them worse. And as you're going to see, gentlemen, more fucking bullshit coming soon. But don't worry, our guy here it will end well for him. Before I met Elaine, I had purchased an oceanfront lot and designed my dream home. Because of its location, there was a ton of red tape to deal with in order to get the required building permits. The land acquisition, design, and permit process took 3 years. Although Elaine had a near-zero relationship with her dad, red flag number 3, after we met, I encouraged her to rebuild that bridge. She took my advice, and after we were married, I got to know her father, who was a great guy and a banker. I went to him for construction financing, and as a condition of the loan, he insisted Elaine sign a quitclaim deed To this day, I believe it wasn't the bank, it was him. He knew his daughter, and he was looking out for me, and I will always be indebted to him. Well, that says a lot if he's looking out more for you than his own daughter. After construction was complete, we moved in. The place was fabulous. Ocean views from all but one room in the entire place. By then, we had 2 kids. So you had another one with her. Please tell me this is your real son. Within a couple of years, Elaine was complaining about not having a yard. I said the beach is our yard. Elaine was pregnant again after the complaining was nonstop. After child number 3 was born, I was wondering how many of these kids are mine. Even though I didn't know what the RP was in those days, I started evaluating her friends, and that only made me more concerned. Yes, I'm falling behind on the smacks and red flags here. Dude, my arm is sore from smacking you. We all know when you deserve to be smacked. So, by the way, beautiful place on the ocean. And she's bitching and complaining because she doesn't have a fucking yard. We lived in a state where even back then biology didn't matter. If you act as the dad, in the eyes of the court, you are the dad. I wonder what state that is. Could it be California? That means in the event of a divorce, you pay alimony and child support, the mom gets the kids, and you get every other weekend visitation. Fortunately, the laws provide that all property you had prior to the marriage does not become community property unless you commingle assets. Side note, SSM gives excellent advice regarding maintaining separate bank and credit card accounts. You are doing great work. Yes, gentlemen, separate accounts, and don't let her be on your credit card or any of that stuff. I'm telling you now. I didn't want to file divorce because of the kids. I know we differ on this, but back then we didn't have the statistics that we have now comparing 2-parent, fatherless, and motherless households. As you know, the worst of 3 is fatherless households in terms of juvenile delinquency, dropout, suicide, incarceration, poverty, and in and out of wedlock children. Motherless homes are better, but children are far more likely to succeed if they're raised in a home with both parents. That is true, and there's any wonder you see all over this country and in the cities, particularly the blue cities, these freaking teenagers raising holy hell. You can't go a few days without seeing this. And I'm willing to bet you the majority of those kids grew up in single-parent households. I bet you those, and they're usually boys, are raised by the mothers who don't lay down the law like a father would, and the list goes on and on and on. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some single moms out there that do their best and try hard, and that are decent people. I know some, but the majority are nuts. But they're not going to lay down the law and set the example with a boy the way that a father would, or hopefully the right father. It's been proven 2-parent households, night and day better results with the kids, and it's unfortunate that it goes on like this. It doesn't mean I'm giving those kids a pass for the bullshit these teenagers are doing around the country, which many of you guys are aware of what I'm talking about. They deserve a good swift kick in the ass, but there are problems that, thanks to many things in our society right now, aren't helping. Anyway, had to be said. Anyway, it says here, of course, if the parents keep the needs of their children as their priority, as opposed to their own selfish needs and petty bickering, the kids are more likely to flourish compared to any other situation. I agree, but on the other hand, you can't stay in a miserable fucking marriage and all that, so you got to handle it right. Although it was a long shot, I figured the only way to stop Elaine's complaining might be to move, so I rented a house. Smack! No, you tell her to shut the fuck up. You're married to a multi-millionaire living on the fucking beach. Stop your complaining. But his solution is appeasement. Try to make her happy. You're not going to make her happy by appeasing her. That's weakness in her eyes, and she'll complain more and do more bullshit. Check your women, gentlemen. No way was I going to buy a property now that I was aware of the red flags all over the place. I didn't tell her this, but I also thought that if she changed her attitude in a few years, I'd also consider buying instead of renting. As you might guess, her attitude changed. It got worse. Well, that was predictable. Act weak, they're going to act worse. One day she told me she needed to get away to clear her head. She went to the Caribbean, and since I was taking care of the kids, I sent a private investigator to keep tabs on her. Sure enough, within a few days, she'd hooked up with a local guy we'd call Romeo. I was suspecting Abdul, but I was wrong. Abdul's on a freaking yacht sailing around the Mediterranean with like 5 of his, Kuwaiti hoes. He doesn't care about your wife anymore. When she returned, I told her I knew everything, and we could either file for a divorce or we can make a serious attempt to rebuild our relationship. And he says, I know, double smack. Yeah, good luck on that one. When she wasn't moping around, she was at her girlfriend's house, which I knew meant she was probably cheating on me. One morning, a couple of months later, before I went to work, she asked me if I would be in the office all day, and I said, "Don't you remember? I have half a dozen clients flying into town for a meeting this morning." The meeting was in full stride when somebody knocked on the conference door. "Someone is here to see you," my secretary told me. I excused myself for a moment, went to the lobby, and was served the divorce papers. Saw that coming. She was beating you to it. I took a deep breath. I said to myself, when I walk back in there, the first words I'll hear are, "What was that about?" I knew if I told them, we'll spend the rest of the morning talking about war stories involving women, and then everyone would later catch their flights and would accomplish the purpose of the meeting. So I walked back in, said nothing, and we took care of business, and I fell apart later. Good move. You got to take care of business, as hard as that was. And you could have been that upset. The divorce went as expected. Elaine went through 3 attorneys and a forensic accountant before she accepted that she couldn't get her hands on my assets. Good job, man. You did things right early on. Obviously, the pre-marital assets. She received child support, and for 5 years, she also received alimony. Since I was the breadwinner, I was given every other weekend visitation only. What a load of fucking bullshit. A couple of years later, one of Elaine's friends was mad at Elaine. She came to me with a scheme to get revenge on Elaine. Right there. One of her BFFs is now mad at her, so she wants to get even with her. As Al Bundy once said, "Don't try to understand women. Women understand women and they hate each other." I figured it was bad karma and wanted nothing to do with it. She then told me, "You know why Elaine will never give you more child visitation? Because she has always said that she would never do anything that could reduce her child support. In our state, this does affect child support calculations." Within a few years, one of our kids started developing serious behavioral problems, and it was affecting the other kids. Knowing Elaine would let this problem continue indefinitely, I offered to take the troubled son full-time without changing the child support. Under that condition, she agreed. Of course she did. She doesn't give a shit about the kid. She just wanted the flow of money coming in. Try as I did, that son was already pretty far down the road and has had a troubled adulthood. He and I have a close relationship to this day, but he still has his demons he must deal with. Well, do your best with him, but also he's a grown-ass adult, and he's going to take responsibility for his actions. If he's going to be a jackass, you can smack him upside the head the way I smack past you upside the head. And if that doesn't work, well, fly me out to where you live, and I'll come smack him upside the head. I got no problem with that. Just let me stay at your beach house. Elaine never remarried. Well, there's a surprise. She's in her 30s. She's past her prime now. Because of her brains, charm, and beauty, she had a couple of very wealthy, at least one famous relatively short-term boyfriends. However, she was in her 30s with 3 kids, so none of them want to marry her. No surprise there. She had a couple low-value boyfriends, both good guys, with their own issues and no possibility of becoming wealthy. She cut them loose at about the 5-year mark. I asked her about this once, and she admitted that she was worried they might be able to build palimony rights if she let the relationships continue. So much for true love, right? She is incapable of love. Look how she was ready to give one of your boys up just so she could, as long as she could get the alimony payments. He says here, if I had to do it over again with what I know now, I would have walked the moment I entered Elaine's mom's house. Crazy as it sounds, after I learned of the first pregnancy, I can't say I would have made different decisions given the points in time of those decisions. My kids are by far the most important part of my life. I'm sure you have lots of thoughts on this, but here are a few things I've learned. Number 1, he says, and this is his lessons and things he's learned over the years. Number 1, SSM, your advice on the amount of time required before living together, and then if living together is the only as the final test, are totally correct. This is why I tell you guys, 6 months minimum before you get into an exclusive relationship with her, then years before being with her before you even consider something like moving in together. And you only move in together if you're going to marry her as the final test. But you don't marry her or propose until you're with her for years, learning everything about her, her friends, her family, her job, how she is with money. Does she live a healthy lifestyle, or does she sit on her ass and get fat? Is she good with money? How's her credit score, her debts? I mean, years to deal with, see what she's like. Communication skills, how she resolves problems. Does she take care of you in the bedroom? Is she loyal? Is she supportive? Years, gentlemen. Number 2, your advice about wearing protection and after SEX disposing of said protection is totally correct. Women commonly use pregnancy top rope in any reluctant target. Number 3, prenups and separate accounts are absolutely essential. Any woman or man who objects to this is not marriage material. You're damn right about that. Number 4, it should be made a law, but until it is, inform your prospective mate that a prenup will include a mandatory DNA testing as soon as it's safe for the child. There you go. At number 5, your state allows an infidelity clause should be included in the prenup. Oh, and number 6, he says, guys, the laws are changing, but fight for primary custody in a divorce. There are exceptions, but you're more likely to produce happy and successful adult children than their mom. One reason is that men generally don't use the kids as leverage or badmouth their ex in front of their kids, but women frequently do both. That I have noticed. A lot of guys don't want to stir up shit, so they won't talk bad about the mothers, but the mothers most certainly will be able to blame everything on the dad. And yes, try to have the primary custody, because it's been shown, again, you're in a shitty marriage and your wife does awful things. Yeah, best to part ways and as best possible be there for your kids. You can't, because otherwise your kids are going to grow up in a miserable marriage. That being said, the ideal situation is going into a marriage right, taking your time, getting to know the gal, not rushing into it, not being pressured. So that way, hopefully you can have a good marriage and then raise kids in a loving, healthy environment. So you don't have teenage shitheads raising holy hell around this country like it is. But look at the mess right now. But in the situation, ideally the man gets the child, because moms are way easier on boys. Fathers don't allow their sons to pull bullshit like the mothers do. It's a fact. I'm sure many guys have noticed this. Are there exceptions? Yes. And also, but also daughters need their mothers too. But, because there are things a dad can't get with a daughter. Let's be honest here. And also dads are also, let's be honest, dads are easier on the girls. My dad was way easier on my sister than he was with me. That's for sure. But anyhow, so sir, good story here. You made a lot of mistakes, and I'm glad you can admit that. Guarantee you, there are guys out there will learn from your story here. And I'm glad in the end that, she couldn't get married ever again. And the fact that because of the prenup and you're good lawyers, she couldn't touch your real money. So that's really good there. And I'm glad you have a good relationship with your boys now. I hope they're doing well. And that son of yours, he said he's still a little troubled. If he gives you any shit, smack him upside the head. And if not, send me out in your private jet and I'll smack him. All right, guys, that is it for today. Be sure to comment down below and what you think about this. Be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.